Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni. I'm an alignment coach and energy healer. This podcast, Healing Conversation, is all about inspiring stories of natural healing of mind, body, and soul. And without further ado, let me introduce to you today our guest, Nancy Frank. Nancy, it's wonderful to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so appreciative that you asked me to, be here and share some time and some tools. So, thank
I
you.
actually am very excited about this conversation. I mean, we've known each other for a little bit, and every time I hear a little bit about you and a little bit about what you do, and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And I'm really excited to find out a little bit more about you. So let's start with the first question I ask everyone, really. Tell us a little bit about you so everyone can be on the same page.
Okay, so I can go all the way back. I was born in Brooklyn, which is a great thing to say. Brooklynese people would love it. But really, as I grew up, I would say that I had a childhood that was a bit chaotic and had several traumatic events in it. And so at a young age, I was learning how to protect myself. And I was very interested in metaphysics at a young age and started exploring spirituality and a lot of different pathways to finding what I thought was a sense of joy, but I think I was also looking for purpose. I was also looking to figure out for myself, how do I regulate myself in situations that I feel are vulnerable. But when you're young, you really don't have the vernacular for that. All you have is a lot of really, really big feelings. And I had a lot of big feelings. None of them productive or moving me forward. They were sadness, they were resentful, they were angry, blaming. And it took me on a journey also moving to different locations. And I think that in every area that you live, the energy is different and you get to learn a different aspect of what your soul is asking for in order to take the next step in your life's journey. So I lived in Colorado, which is an area that is really connected to nature. I learned a lot there. I lived in Hawaii, which is much more expansive in its nature and accessibility, but it's also tremendous in spirituality. And then I worked my way back to the East Coast, but landed in the Midwest, which is really kind of interesting because the Midwest almost takes what the United States has from each direction of the continent and just, it's a pot waiting to boil. For people's experiences. And so when I was in Denver, I went to graduate school for parapsychology because when I was younger, I really wanted to be of service and to work in the healing field. But what I recognized was that I needed to do my own healing. And by the time I was in my 30s, and living in Denver and going to school in Boulder, I began to realize how much I needed to take responsibility for the way I felt and for how life was happening in my environment. And it was very gratifying when I moved to the Midwest. I think that synchronicity and happenstance are amazing, and you have to be conscious to actually take advantage of opportunities that come your way, because otherwise, if you keep this very narrow perspective and you say, I have a goal, and that goal, and this is the way I want to do it, and these are the steps I see, and I'm envisioning it, you really miss out a lot of the cream on how to get from one place to the other, and to actually connect with the purpose of why you're here, and to connect to your soul. So I began my journey after a very long time working on conception for my only son, our only son. And motherhood, I think, also takes you to a place of wanting to be the best person you can be. And so I began my journey in self-acceptance. And it's a somatic form of healing, but more than anything, it's a way of identifying what you're feeling in your body without judging it, and then validating how you feel and presenting what it is you want to feel and work towards that. And so that enabled me, with some other tools in my toolbox and some other certifications, that enabled me to work with people on their journey. And I kept hearing, well, I don't know what you did, but I feel like I was in a trance. And finally, of course, I heard it, and I got certified to be a hypnotist and a hypnotist trainer, certifying other people. And what I discovered is my way of connecting to hypnotism is not necessarily the wand that goes back and forth, or saying to people, I put you in trance, but really working with people so that they can identify for themselves that in every moment you're hypnotized, you're hypnotizing yourself, you're educating yourself, you are in some ways accessing what you conjure to be what's going to happen, instead of focusing on what you do want to happen. So I focus on words, and I connect the words and the sensations in your body to the work that we do. And here we are.
And here we are. So I want to thank you, of course, for the introduction. And I'm the first thing that kind of I'm curious about is how did you already know at a younger age? How did you understand that really life is happening for you? How did you learn? How did you know about spirituality? And then, like, parapsychology sounds also so so out there. I think, as when you're kind of young, even before age 30 or around age 30, to me sounds a little bit still young. So where did that awareness come from, and also the awareness that this is probably a path that will make life more meaningful?
Well, I would say that with all of the trials and tribulations that faced our family, my mother was basically a person who wanted to engage in the beyond. So we were always encouraged to ask questions. And at a really young age, I would have prophetic dreams, or I would be seeing something or hearing something and get and see it appear or unfold in real life. And I remember when I was walking home from school, in grammar school, I think it was like first or second grade, and I had had a really embarrassing experience in the classroom with the teacher. And I heard myself say, if there's really a God, why would they make me do this again? And then I realized I had done this already. I believed in the core of who I was that I had already been here. And who knows on how many in how many lifetimes or experiences that I had. And that always stuck with me. And I think, by the time I was 15, I was looking at Buddhism. But, when I was younger, about 10 or 12, I had a very disenchanting experience with organized religion. And I really rejected it. I felt this has nothing to do with your connection to God or the Creator. And so is it the form of religion, or is it the way different organizations are interacting with their congregations or their policies? And it wasn't really until I lived in Hawaii that I understood the sense of spirituality that is so vibrational, and that there are so many miracles that can happen. Not myself, but studying, I did study Huna, but I had friends who were Hawaiian, who that was their life. That was their belief system in Huna. And, they walked through walls. So it's the dramatic, the mysticism that's available is real, and then when I was, the other thing that was kind of fun was when I was really young, my parents and their grandparents grew up in an Orthodox Jewish background. And my great-grandfather would say to me, Nancy, do you want to study Kabbalah? And I'm telling you, he was like really religious with a beard down to the middle of his chest, and I would say yes, because I would do anything my great-grandfather wanted me to do. And he said, no, you can't do it. You're too young. You're a girl. And I always thought that was kind of odd that he would tease me that way. So when I was in Paris, when I was in graduate school, there was actually a course on Kabbalah. And I took the course, and it was taught by an ex-priest, which I thought was wild. And I had already, years before, I had already taught myself tarot, how to read tarot cards. And I did that a lot while I was in Hawaii. And I didn't realize that Kabbalah was, the seed for psychology, and how many Freud studied it, Einstein studied it, Nostradamus studied it, and so it captivated me, but I didn't stay with it because it felt more like an adjunct tool rather than something that I could actually apply in my life and help guide me to be the person who I wanted to be. And then when my son was 4, he went to the Waldorf school, and they had a lecture, and after, an adult lecture, and someone came from the Kabbalah Kabbalah Center, and they introduced Kabbalah in a way that I sat there completely mesmerized, thinking, he is talking directly to me. And every open wound, every question, every family dynamic, in those moments, I knew this was the place for me to gain more knowledge and understanding. And so that's over 25 years that I've been studying Kabbalah.
Well,
I hope I answered your question, because I went, over the bridge.
I definitely want to ask a little bit more about, what did you find about spirituality, and also this experience in Hawaii and Huna and all of that. I'm not even sure I know what that means. So yes, we'll go there for a minute, and then I want to know more about Kabbalah and your experience with it. And of course, you say 25 years, so it makes me, of course, realize or acknowledge that this is something that you grow with, and it's not just you don't stay at the same level. You grow with it. So
well, and the beauty is you're constantly being made aware that there's so much that you don't know, right? And what I might have known or thought a week ago may completely change today.
yeah.
So, Huna is, it's Huna. It became very popular for a while, and I'm pretty sure they changed the names of it. But it's one more very accessible and vivid way of meditating, visualizing, and interacting, being your best self, and manifesting goodness in your life. But there's I say this with reverence. There's magic. There's miracles.
So I guess, but I would like to go back to what you said earlier about finding spirituality, because as I'm listening to you, and although you say that this is something that you grew up with, especially you say your mom was already introducing you to this idea of looking into the beyond and all of that. And it sounds really interesting that we have to navigate life in one way, and then here you are having to go through the normal, navigation situations, and also having to navigate this idea that yes, there is a beyond, but also your gift. And it seems like, I kind of imagine that this must have been a little bit struggling, not struggling maybe is not the right word, but yeah, challenging, because there's so much to make sense of. But then you say that the spirituality part, really, you understood that when you were in Hawaii. So a little bit, if you can expand a little bit on that, finding that what spirituality really meant, and how it's connected with you.
Well, I want to preface this by saying it's very similar to the understanding that what I believed or what I thought or what I said or how I judged something last week could be very different this week. Living in Hawaii gave me an incredible appreciation, bigger than I ever could have imagined, for nature, for creation. And there's also an aspect of living in Hawaii as a haole, which is very lonely. And so how do you balance that? Being in the presence of higher energy is indescribable. It's personal. It's uplifting. It's awesome. You're in awe. And I would say that nature, as well as the native Hawaiians, they embody this. They embody nature within them. They embody a sense of creation within them. And their reverence of everything, their respect, is more than just admirable. It's the way we should all be looking at life. Would we have environmental issues, political issues? No, if we revered creation. I mean, because you think about it, you get hungry and you make a snack. And maybe you clean the dishes up or maybe you don't. But did you really pay attention to where that snack came from, how it was sourced, what you're doing with it, how you're preparing it, honoring it when you put something into your mouth, and appreciating that your stomach may not be full, but you're satisfied? I think that was a really important lesson for me to learn as an adult, because, we're not generally modeled that. Life keeps getting faster and faster. What you do keeps getting run by faster and faster, and things get short-circuited. And I don't think we do enough modeling of appreciation. So I'd say that was an opening to my heart. Did I recognize at that point that my heart and my soul were the same? I don't think so. but I knew that there was something bigger. And I knew that you could call it the universe, you could call it light, you could call it the creator, you could call it God. And there are so many different names for God. But the one thing it is something bigger than we are. And I'd say that the lesson we all get to learn over and over again is that we don't have any control of what's coming next. The only thing we have control over, and even that could be on a tightrope, is how we're going to react or respond to it. And there's a huge difference between reacting and responding. But, you know, that opened my heart in a way that love opened my heart and then hurt it. And I do think that knowing what love feels like, what you want it to feel like, how you embody and share love is a big part of spirituality.
I like everything that you said, really, and it resonates with me a lot. I definitely agree that we, in our, at least the world that I'm witnessing, it is very fast, and there is not much thought about anything, and there's a lot of afterthought, and there's a lot of doing and not thinking. And of course, that also leads to the idea of what you're saying about controlling and being, having the illusion of control, which is so important because we struggle with it so much, especially people, I guess, with some childhood wounds around needing to be in control, needing to be the only person that was in control. And now, how do we even help them see that control is really just this illusion? And then what you're saying about, yes, reacting and responding, it's very different energy to that. So I know that we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but I want to kind of ask. So you came back from Hawaii, and then you got some contact points with Kabbalah. Let's go into there and help us understand a little bit more what is Kabbalah and how come we all heard about it and not all of us know what it means, and everything that you find about it that is attracting you to them, to the core of that.
So Kabbalah is the study of spirituality, and you are studying it from the book of the Zohar, which is splendor, and it's got a vibration to it. All the books have a vibration to it. Actually, this book, I don't know if it faces you directly, but it's 23 volumes, and there are 2 volumes that are just for healing and protection, and that book, this little book, is a condensed version of those volumes. And it predates any religion. It actually talks about the Big Bang. There isn't anything major in science that isn't within the Zohar. And I could talk for hours, but basically it's as much connected to the lineage of the sages that have taught this for centuries. And it was protected for a long time, and it was an oral exchange, and then it was written, and it was conducted in study with very small groups, and there were a lot of rules around it. I feel incredibly fortunate to be connected to the Kabbalah Center, which was brought to the United States by Rav Berg. There's a lot of history and a lot of names, but Rav Berg and now his son and daughter-in-law, Michael and Monica Berg, they are the directors of the Kabbalah Center. They have study groups and centers in many locations. They have one in London. And it is about learning how to understand the tools that are provided for us and apply them in everyday life. There are windows in time. The holidays belong to everybody. You know, the Book of Abraham is really about astrology, you know, which is all in the Zohar. There's so many things that have been predicted because one of the concepts of Kabbalah is there's no time, space, and motion. So things are happening simultaneously. And I wish I could do this, you know, I could speak better and do it better justice, because I think the greatest lesson for me and what keeps me involved is that you could say it's an academic, intellectual study, but if you're ever going to apply it, it is a lifestyle, and you're learning it by your heart and your soul. So there are meditations that you learn. There are, as I said, windows in time. We're in the holiday of Hanukkah. Is it just about Hanukkah? No, it's not the story. It's not just the story of the Maccabees. It's much more about the miracles that we get to make. And so today until next Monday, every single day, we get to think about someone we want to create a miracle for. And that law of attraction is about understanding the premise that what we think is a boomerang. So when we are giving and sharing and meditating on other people, that's gravy for us. Rather than thinking that I have to have it all myself. And studying Kabbalah really helps you understand the difference between your soul and your ego. And your ego is what they say is in the 1%, and your soul is in the 99%. But how do you access the 99%? Consciousness. So consciousness, as the Rav says, is everything. Karen, his wife, is really the person who encouraged the Rav to bring studying Kabbalah to the masses, because it was only meant for highly religious, studious, Torah men over 40, married with at least a boy and a girl. And now, you know, when...
This is the thing that is kind of creating a conflict for myself, because for me, these rules, this is this organized religion, and what you are describing is spirituality, which is beyond organized religion and all of that. So, and this is also for me kind of something that I guess I do struggle with it in some way, that, you know, having been, you know, born and raised in Israel, and having to learn all the Bible and all of that, and finding that I can't lean into the stories because of the religious. I'm not religious, not in this way, but I like the stories, and
Right.
so it's really, and now what you and then. And I don't think I ever heard of Kabbalah when I was growing up, until one day everyone was talking about it. And I was like, where did that come from? Like, why didn't we know anything about it? And now you're kind of explaining to me why we never heard about it. But how do we make this separation to understand that, yes, I mean, what are these rules? Why are they there?
Because when you're looking at, for instance, I totally connect with you about the stories. I like the stories, right? It's symbolism and code. And there's part of what the mysticism is, that we need to learn never to take anything at face value. There's always a way to go deeper. And if we stick just with the idea that Oh, I heard, don't keep the door open for the next person who's coming in. You're in a rush. Is that me talking? I don't relate to that person. I relate to that fleeting thought because it's true, but I would still hold the door open because my soul is won't be in alignment, and my feelings won't be in alignment if I close the door without paying attention to who's behind me. I could be walking towards a door completely alone and I still look back to see if there's anybody behind me. And I think that that's what we're really meant to be focusing on. That's spirituality. And when you're unkind to yourself, how can you be kind to other people? So, there's so much more, there are so many more layers to take off because we have been really, really good at talking ourselves out of being open and kind. We've been taught that being self-protective is the only way to go. And if you are just walking around thinking you're the only person that you have to take care of, you are cutting yourself off from your soul and your sense of spirituality and your connection to the rest of the world.
So in Kabbalah, you say you're learning about spirituality, and then you also learn to put it in practice every day, right?
Right.
Into everyday life, understanding and all of that. So
So for instance, just as an example of how that goes. So recently I was on a class, and the class is called Limitless, and Eitan Yordeni is the teacher, and it's a class that's on Zoom all over the world. A couple hundred people are on the Zoom, and there was a lesson understanding when you're in a situation with someone, how easy it is for you to blame them without looking at yourself. And so for the first time, there were several classes before this, and the group, even though there are so many people on Zoom, the group is gelled, and there's a form of trust because of what we're studying, the wisdom that we're studying, and people are willing to talk and to actually claim their responsibility in the way in which they have dismissed someone else's feelings. So another more hands-on example. When I'm driving, I don't know about your roads, but here in Chicago, our roads are terrible. And when someone cuts me off, I went from cursing them out, which felt good for like a millisecond, to saying, oh, wow, thank you. First of all, we're both safe. Second of all, if he's in a big hurry, she's in a big hurry, let them get to where they're going safely. Most of all, that person saved me from something that I have no idea what it is. And I go through that whole dialogue.
and this is, I'm glad that you brought it up. I mean, first of all, I was just smiling about the topic of conversation because, of course, there is no coincidences, but that's exactly what I was writing in my Sunday email this week. So it's like, it's like okay, yes. But the question is, I I believe in what you're saying. I definitely believe that things happen the way they're meant to happen, because if they're not meant to happen in this way, they would have happened in another way. They always happen in the way that they're meant to happen. And I really do appreciate this idea that sometimes things happen and we can't see. We don't know why they happen in the way that they have, but we have to bring this trust that, yes, we are being prepared for something that is bigger and better, and also that maybe something even more terrible would have happened if that other thing was going to come forward. But why is it easy for me to accept that and to really stand behind it? And of course for you, but for other people, it's so hard. And they would say to you, like, yes, but it's really hard for some people to understand. Now I get that there's different level of spirituality and where we at and all of that, but how do we kind of start to bridge that gap to help people see that really there is something behind everything? There are no coincidences. Things really always happen I believe behind the scene thing, behind the scene kind of organized way.
Well, I believe modeling and using your voice is the only way that's going to happen. And some people just aren't ready. And their path and learning curve hasn't taken them to a place that is safe enough for them to ask and create the desire to take responsibility and to feel the joy of being a better person. Not everything that's coming towards us is going to feel good. And the way in which we look at it makes all the difference in the world. So you and I met because I had gotten a diagnosis of diffuse B, large diffuse B lymphoma. And with all my tools, I got that diagnosis and I was in shock. I never said, why me? That from my Kabbalah lesson stuck. But I was wide-eyed and incredulous. And I wanted to know how to get out of shock, to move forward, to begin my journey of acceptance and healing. And I shout out to you. You were instrumental in clearing the pathways, because I must have gone right back into my past in the belief without even knowing it. Every single memory we have lives in each cell that are in our body. And they come up like popcorn every once in a while. They get triggered and they come up. And I believe that that's what happened to me. I was unable to see myself. I saw my mother. I saw my grandmother. I saw my aunt. I saw my, I was gone. And the work that you do was so instrumental in helping me ground and balance and regulate the vibration and energy in my body, that I was then able to say, wow, okay, now I have all these meditations and tools from Kabbalah. Scanning the Zohar, do it 5, 15 minutes, 3 hours, your life changes. Literally, the Zohar has light emanating from it. There are certain machines that photograph the Zohar and illustrate in graphic appearance light coming out of a Zohar. There are miracles. People get a Zohar and the next day they get a job. They hadn't had a job interview for years, but they get a job. So being once again open because of the work that you do was the beginning of an incredible learning curve for me to use both the tools that I teach other people and the tools of Kabbalah for believing wholeheartedly that everything that unfolded was a gift. And I truly believe that. Friendships that I have, they they literally downloaded in a deeper level. I was facing conversations that I never wanted to face. I had joy from every one of these connections. I would sit having my chemo treatment, and the nurses would say, I can't believe how well you're doing. I go for my oncology appointments, and they'd be going, people, we're so glad that you're having a very well looked at process, but this is not our experience with the protocol that you're having. So being open, I would say, is fundamental. Being open also means being a really good listener. You have to listen, choosing to listen, regardless of whether or not you like what you're hearing. Choosing to listen without judging it, just processing it, and then responding makes all the difference in the world when you're dealing with other people who aren't behaving the way you want them to.
Listening to what? To who? Is it a general thing that you're saying, or is it more specific about your healing journey?
I think it's general. I think it, unless you're willing to work on your listening skills, healing is going to be more challenging.
And I know that there was a time that I was specifically saying that I was working with people with chronic conditions and cancers and stuff like that. But I realized that a lot of the people with chronic conditions, and I said that because that was my experience, I felt that they didn't really want to heal. And that was the language I used. And using your language is that I guess it didn't feel like they wanted to listen. They definitely, and I'm not judging anyone, of course, everyone
Right,
has their
right.
own journey. But for me, being the person, the guide in that situation, it was very frustrating for me because I couldn't do my thing. And so I really do like that you are mentioning this openness, because there is a message. There is a message. Your body is giving us, when we're going through a journey like that, it definitely gives us a message. And I also recognize what you're saying about the shock that you found yourself at the beginning, because here you are on a couple of different levels, right? You have the how you feel right now, which is the shock, and for other people, they will get that shock and they will get into confusion, and of course, other emotion, anger, and why me and all of that. But so some people will choose to just go down the route of being cured, versus what you are describing. Really, it's the route of healing, and it's more rounded, and it's really about asking the questions and listening. But again, the same question: how can here you are telling us a story, your experience with the Kabbalah and the Zohar, which is sounds like really a source of miracles. But how do we bring that into everyone? Why is not everyone heard of this, and why is not everyone, that's the first thing that they do when they get diagnosed with anything?
Well, I would say that there are many forms of spirituality that provide the same tools. If you look at the tenets of the Zohar and Buddhism, they're very similar. You could go the holidays, look at all the different holidays, they coincide with each other all over the world. You're asking a profound question, and I can feel that it's from your heart. And people either have desire to be open to a form of spirituality that creates them to be a being of contribution to their environment and the world, or they're unready. And you never know what situation is going to ask you in a unlikable way to be more, to do more, to want more. You know, I had a discussion with someone about the words desperate and desire. And, you know, when people are desperate, they're kind of icky to be around. But that same person can know that their life is meant to be so much more without being able to see it, and create desire in their life to walk a path that manifests that. And sadly, there is a lot of people in the world that are more prevalent to connecting to hatred and destruction and violence than, and the news is covering that, and they should, right? But the news isn't covering the people who are sitting together and meditating around the world for 30 minutes at a particular time during the night. You know, one of the things that I will say, the first thing that I heard differently, because I had rejected this phrase until I got diagnosed, was, Nancy, you need help. Let people help you. Allow people to help you. You can do it on your own. Should you do it on your own? And I heard that it changed my life. The second thing was, if that hadn't been said, another friend who put together what's called a Power of 8. It's a meditation group. You're shaking your head so you know about it. I'm still doing it twice a week. And there aren't enough words to describe how knowing, whether the people get on to meditate or they don't, I'm in that energy twice a week, and I think about it every day. So the question you have is really, it's so profound. And we should never say to ourselves, oh, I'm only going to think about myself. That should never be said or thought. However, you have an opportunity to recommit to your own ethics and values every day and model those. And believe that the energy exists in the world and that there are other people with like-minded hearts and souls doing the very same thing.
And this is something that it is interesting for me to kind of notice the similarities between my alignment coaching and everything that you are talking about, and so I can not think about some of my clients or some people that I'm in conversations with, and how it is so what you are saying is really choose the energy that you are tuning into, and you recognize that there is an energy that is healing or is matching healing, and then there's energy that is not. And when I talk to people about energy, and I'm not saying the best at explaining it or anything like that, but I do understand that my understanding is that really you can't be in the energy of healing if you are also in the energy of anger or resentment or frustrations and something like that. And I don't know. I guess I don't really have a question because sometimes I do find that, like you said before, people are on different stages, and some people will be, willing to listen and willing to try. But it's just that, a lot of the time, I guess people are kind of saying, I'm open to hear this. I'm open to accept that there is something else or different out there, also different energy. I don't know how to do that.
Well, and that's the difference between approaching something intellectually and academically versus through your heart. I mean, I was studying for 4 or 5 years, and I realized I have to start all over again. I don't remember what happened that finally made me realize I was in my head. And life changed. I had I had a very challenging relationship with my mother, and so I think that I'm predisposed to thinking out of the box in some ways. And my mother had become very ill, and she was really annoying to be around, and everything she said or did triggered me. And I refused to walk into a room and behave inside the way I was feeling. And I decided, I'm going to just make believe she's somebody else's mother. And I walked in, hey, Mom, and I was visualizing her completely related to someone else, and our relationship changed. And that hurt feeling that we carry when people disappoint us and they're still in our life and we're still dealing with them, understanding that's about them versus us, and we can meditate and share energy towards them for their healing, that changes things. In Kabbalah, we learn and hear and use the word certainty a lot. And in my meditations, I was certain that I was already healed. I'm going through the healing process, and I can do that. But when time, space, and motion is all the same thing, I am completely certain I'm already healed. I am completely certain that the Creator gave this to me as an incredible opportunity. It's a gift. And the miracle in studying Kabbalah, because I definitely attribute it to studying Kabbalah, is that I felt better before, even the day before being diagnosed, than I do now. The reason why I was diagnosed was because I had a wound that would not heal. And it was fluky. It was weird. It was just a weird little thing. And I kept going, it's no big deal. Just, I put a little Band-Aid on, And then a friend said to me, I said, could you just help me with this bandage? I don't know what's going on. She's a nurse practitioner. And she looked at me, and I had never heard her sound so calm. But she said, you don't mess around with something like this. Go to the doctor. And I went, oh, in my head, she's over dramatizing. Come on. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor sent me for these biopsy scans, this, then. And I even said to her, don't you think you're making something big out of this? So both things can be true. I was certain that I was 100% healthy before I got diagnosed.
But I want to ask about this certainty. It's very interesting for me. This is something that I'll need to think about for a little bit. But what I know, and from people that are going through healing journeys, people that are having financial challenges. This is actually one that I get a lot recently from people. There's definitely something to do with the energy of lack in the groups and stuff that I'm around, or relationship as well. So, so the thing is that I can raise my energy. I can do these different practices. I can have listening to different things that will help me get into that energy. And yet, so often, then you say, okay, I'll go another bill, or here's another thing, or another scan, or another something. So it's kind of like being in two levels, right? On the one hand, this is how I feel, and I trust, and on the other hand, here's my reality that kind of knocks me on the head and says, it's not. Right. So how do we?
It's you go to that place where you say, this is happening for me. So in the last month or so, I've had to be creative with my cash flow. And I got in the mail, not one, not two, not three, but 4 tickets for my car. And with each ticket, the first ticket I was annoyed. And I'm like, what? And then I kept, literally 3 in one day, and then 1 like the week later. And I laughed with every ticket. After the first one, I laughed and I said, I guess this is for all the stop signs that nobody caught me. I guess this is for all the red lights that I skated through. I guess this is for all the speeding on the highway and all those angels protecting me. And I am so positive that this evens a debt that I might have on a karmic level, and abundance is coming. I am certain that this is happening for me. And I'm more aware when I'm driving now because I want to be ticket free. So yeah, tons of blessings in that.
I completely agree with what you say, but I think it's the way that you say it is really nice to hear. I know that when I was going through some financial tightness, and all of a sudden, yes, there was this bill, and I'm like, and I realized that I had an attachment to being the person that always pays the bill on time, and I was like, but I have no money, so and it was very interesting to see that here I was really attached to something that is positively perceived, but actually it's an attachment. And I was like, and that's also what we said about control, right? Because
but you see, you used a word that creates an image versus the illusion, which both are an illusion. You said money was tight. I didn't say that. I said I had a cash flow issue, right? The words you use are paramount. The idea of anything that's in your life, you have an opportunity and the option to choose words that create a good feeling in your body and create something good in your environment. When you said money's tight, your whole, like from your neck to your face, you tensed, right? So that's without the kind of consciousness that connects you to your sense of soul and spirituality. Is your soul worried about money?
Not at all.
No, your ego is, right? And you said your ego, the ego who's attached to paying a bill on time. Well, I've paid bills on time and still gotten notices saying they never received them. So who's living the illusion? I sent the check. Right?
It is funny. It is funny when you say that, absolutely. But I guess now I'm not going to speak, right? Because
No, I'm
the
open. I'm just listening.
yeah, no, but I agree with you. I agree with you on everything that you said. But for me, in that time, it was definitely that thing of it was for me for sure, and I also, you know, I was able to say this is how I feel, and I can recognize that I can go down with it, and really spiral down, or I can say I recognize that this is an energy situation going on, and let me actually find a way to raise my energy, do something that I really enjoy, and really not think about it, because it was not in my control. I
And
didn't.
a great way to remind yourself is every single person has had has a memory of conjuring someone in their mind, having a conversation with them, and either bumping into them or having the phone ring and they're on, or having 3 people bring them up in conversation during the day. When you want to think about abundance rather than scarcity.
Yeah. But what I wanted to ask is and yes, it's about abundance and scarcity and healing and not being healthy. What do we do when? Okay, you kind of you maybe you answered that, because I was thinking you open up, you're open minded. You say, all right, this is how I am and all of that, and then something comes and slap you in the face, and then you're like, but what you are saying is really you're finding the way to see how is this a gift. And
Well, and for sure, one of the biggest hurdles for me was in a million years, I never imagined myself going through the chemo protocol. I never imagined myself taking prescribed pharmaceutical drugs. Ever since I was a kid, holistic, homeopathic, eat what you want to, eat how you want to feel. Nature is medicine. And what I heard was you have a choice about living or deciding that you're complete, because this is considered terminal. It's a terminal diagnosis, not taken care of. So I realized in that way, oh, this is about balance. I have an opportunity to work better on my balance. I can do both. And I did both. And I believe that most people, when they are unable to listen because their emotions are so loud, they are unable to recognize that they are out of balance, that they are that their energy, is above them or behind them or in front of them rather than sitting in their body. One of the first things I do with people is teach them how to connect to their energy. Most people don't recognize. I'll say a particular statement. How did you feel when I said XYZ? And they'll go, I don't know. Okay, well, let's do a few breaths. Imagine that the breath is like a swirl of energy and it's going towards your feet. Now feel your feet getting more and more connected to the ground. Now say that sentence out loud. Where do you feel the energy in your body? People are so unaware that they're detached. And it takes practice. I have opportunities every day to sit back in touch with my energy.
I really feel that there's another few hours of conversations here that I needed to touch on everything that I want to ask.
Well, thank you for being so receptive. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do have so many more questions. But because earlier you mentioned about really the somatic practices that you do, that you anyway do, but also working with other people, and then there was the hypnotherapy, and so what is next for you?
What I would love to do is share more about what works for me with people who are in the process of discovery about their dis-ease or their diagnosis and their healing journey. I have felt that along every step of my professional career, it has been in alignment with something that I've healed from. Those are the people, whatever it is that I may have gone through as a life event, and I approach it and I decide I'm breaking it down, I'm integrating it into my wellness being. I find that those are the clients that end up gravitating towards me. And this is the same. Everything that I've gone through has a purpose, and my purpose is to be as open and sharing as I possibly can. And thank you for asking that.
Well, probably because I want to sign up for whatever it is that you do.
I'd love that.
It's wonderful to chat with you today, and to really get this day-to-day life happening kind of thing of how you say things to yourself, how you explain things to yourself, how you choose something that is actually beneficial and helpful more than what we kind of do a lot of the time, which is completely blindly. And you said earlier, we hypnotize ourselves, and I think we do all the time. And so I think it's fascinating to have you share with us, you really.
Thank you. Thanks.
So I guess we do probably need to come to some sort of an end in this conversation. So before we say goodbye, what is one message that you would like our listeners or viewers to take away from this conversation today?
I would say that the way in which you talk to yourself is underrated and undervalued. And the better you get at paying attention to what you say to yourself and then improve upon it and direct your words in a productive, kind, generous, loving, forgiving way, the better you'll enjoy life and the people in your life, and the better the people in your life will enjoy you. They'll know you're different. They just will be unable to figure out what exactly it is.
Yeah, well, I have conversation with people in my household a lot, and I would hear them say things, and I'm like, don't say it. Why do you say that? You know, I react to these
Well,
things in this way. They're like, it's just a joke. I'm like, don't say it, don't say
so that word don't is a huge knot, and it it literally instructs people to do the opposite of what you want them to do. And I would also say that in thinking about who you want to be kind. Be kind, and you can have a lot of conversations with people about how you want to interact with them in a very visual way, and create resolve about things that you feel are untenable. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I know that when I was more, engaging with NLP, that's when we were saying, right, that when you use a negative word, the subconscious mind just deletes that and just says, "So you want me to say, right?" No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank
I love
you.
our
Thank you.
conversation. Thank you.
Me too. I so appreciate your time. And again, I am in awe of the work you do. And many, many more people should connect with you and continue on their own journey of healing with your support. Amazing. Thank you.
Maybe there's going to be some collaboration.
That would be nice. I'd love that.
Yes, yes, wonderful. So let me just say a few words to the people who are watching and listening. Of course, thank you for being here with us, and I'm sure you've got a lot of value from this conversation, as I have. Of course, all of Nancy's information is going to be in the show notes, so please do get in touch if this feels right. Also, do share, like, comment on this conversation, because that's what helps us to reach more people and spread the word. And then, of course, we just want to say lastly that this conversation is also in collaboration with Tribe Healing Arts. Maybe, Nancy, you can say a little word about Tribe?
Tribe is run by co-directors Ellen and Carrie, and it's been their vision to bring like-minded people of service and skills in one place and support each other. It's a fabulous community. And it is about working out of that space individually and sharing that space collectively and individually, and it's a wonderful property and concept in Chicago.
Right. And I'll just add to that of course it's face-to-face but also online. Thank you so much. Nancy, thank you so much
Thank
again
you.
for being here with us today, and thank you everyone for watching, and
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you.
Take care.